Hello and welcome to episode 35 of the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I'm Allan Simon. The 3-9 New York Jets take on the 5-7 Miami Dolphins at MetLife Stadium on Sunday to finish up their two-game series in this 2025 season. Week 4 feels like a long time ago when they blew an opportunity to get a win in Miami. It was the beginning of the crisis period for this team for sure, as they lose a tough game of Monday Night Football, and overall the wheels were falling off Justin Fields' season, and the Jets were a mess. And it feels like a different team than it did in that first half of the season. Winning games certainly helps that, as the Jets come off a very nice victory against the Atlanta Falcons. And that Falcons game was important in a lot of ways. For one, it's now really shown, and I don't think it needs to be repeated every week at this point, that this team is playing really hard. This team cares. This team is full of guys who are trying to prove that they should be on this roster long term. There are guys on this team that were throw-ins in trades, and I'm sure that they don't like to be called throw-ins. And overall, a team that has traded 2 all-pro players in Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner and a good player in Michael Carter. This team's a better team than it was 5 weeks ago. And Aaron Glenn deserves a lot of credit for that. Aaron Glenn deserves credit for the fact that this team cares. And this defense is getting better. It's still not great. I think we can really say where the weaknesses are, and linebacker is first and foremost. Jamien Sherwood had his worst game of the year, and outside of being present in tackling, on run plays, he is a huge liability in the pass, and overall just has had a terrible season. And I think Quincy Williams is going to walk, and Quincy maybe doesn't fit this scheme very well, whether it's Steve Wilks as the defensive coordinator or someone else under Aaron Glenn. But Brandon Stephens has another really good game. He was the highest rated corner for the Jets according to Pro Football Focus, and he's really been very solid since week 3. He started off very poorly, and then he got exposed in a couple of games after the Sauce Gardner trade, but he has been a very solid corner for the Jets and seems like a guy worthy for this team long term. We know what Brownlee Jr. has been able to show every so often. The defensive line is getting some nice play from some youngsters, and there's a lot of positives to take from this team. Now that the stank is off of that 0-7 start, and is Aaron Glenn one and done is officially dead, and he's earned that right for sure. There's parts of this team that feel really good. What would make it feel even better is if they beat the Dolphins on Sunday. And the Dolphins at 5-7 are technically still in the playoff hunt. Actually, the Jets have not been technically eliminated yet, although we know that they're not making the playoffs. But this would be a great opportunity to build on the momentum you've had. You're now winning games. You've won 3 games of the last 5, and it gives you a chance to show that you're a team that's not going to be pushed around in this league and be a place that other players want to play for next year. Aaron Glenn is showing that maybe he's a guy guys want to play for next year. He is coaching on the sideline. And I think it's a little lazy to blame Robert Saleh for everything and to go back and say, well, we didn't see this last year. But Aaron Glenn is hands-on in how he coaches his players. And it seems like the message has come across a little less curt and a little less him screaming at guys. Maybe it's because these are players he wanted here. And maybe he was done with Sauce Gardner. Maybe he didn't like the feel of this team and he was being rough around the edges because of that. The noise around him is quieted down because the team is winning and because the team is playing hard. And to see him on the sideline engaged constantly is really, really positive. And I was very critical of Aaron Glenn. Any coach who's 0-7 should be criticized. But to win 3 of 5 is a really good turnaround. And to beat a team in the Dolphins, a team that has outside hopes make the playoffs, one of your rivals, to put the dagger in their heart and knock them out of the playoffs would be really satisfying. The Jets aren't getting the first overall pick. The Jets aren't going to be a top 3 pick at this point. They're not going to be in range probably to trade up for a Mendoza. Any of these hopes of you want the Jets to lose out and bottom out to have a chance at Mendoza or whatever the quarterback is, if it's Simpson or Moore, although I don't think Moore is going to come out, it's not worth it. It is much more valuable to show that you are a functioning team that good players should want to go to. The Jets will have good cap space next offseason. They have a lot of holes to fill, but it is promising to see how this team has responded. Now, to temper that, let's not forget that Adam Gase in his first year went 6-2 to end the season. And next year, obviously, Darnold has mono, and that season is a disaster. It's the Adam Gase isn't going to spend time with his family on Thanksgiving, and then gets blown out that week. That season showed that Adam Gase should not be in the NFL, and he hasn't been since for a reason. But there's sometimes, kind of like September in baseball, some false views can be made of players who play well when the season is over. So you want to be skeptical of what you see, but not to state the obvious, it's much better to see good football from this team. There's an easy path to 5 wins here for the Jets, and that ends up being about where we all thought this would be. I don't think anyone thought they would start 0-7, and it's certainly frustrating that in this AFC, where the Dolphins are 5-7 and are only 2 games out of a playoff spot here in December, that the Jets couldn't even put up a fight this year. But the flip side is, give yourself something to be excited about. This offensive line looks good. The secondary looks like it has some promising pieces, although there's still work to be done. Linebacking is an issue. The defensive line has some solutions. Will McDonald looks like a steady, legitimate pass rusher in this league. On offense, again, the offensive line, really promising, and Membu's going to be allowed to fail and learn. Same with Fashanu as we go, and another game and another end of a season where Tippmann can learn this position better. And I think the chorus is around re-signing Breece Hall and adding some pieces next to Garrett Wilson. And one of those could be keeping a guy like A.D. Mitchell, who has his first 100-yard game, scores his first touchdown against the Falcons. And when he's catching the ball, proves that he really is a dynamic type of player. We know he can get open, but now he's hauling the ball in. And what Tyrod Taylor is showing you is that in this offense, a middle-of-the-road quarterback can make this offense look pretty functioning. And that's without Garrett Wilson. That's without still not getting a ton out of Breece Hall every single day. So there's a lot of positives to take from this. It would be crushing to get blown out by Miami. At this point, I don't think you should expect that, but it's certainly possible. Miami's got a lot to play for. And there might be a point in the season, probably after the Saints game, where the Jets are like, all right, I'm ready to pack this up. And they have a tougher end after this stretch with Miami and the Saints. But a good performance against a Dolphins team that I don't think is very good, that has won 3 of their last 4 against weak competition, would be extremely satisfying. And it'd be another feather in the cap for Aaron Glenn, who has turned this season around. And there's nothing the media likes to do more, or what New Yorkers like to do more, than build someone back up that we've completely torn down. So this feels like a natural progression for Glenn this year. He couldn't stay as bad as they were when they were 0-7. But there's still things I want Aaron Glenn to do better. He has another questionable 4th down decision in the game against Atlanta. He doesn't seem to have a belief system in how he handles those things. But there's a lot to be happy with. And the other one, we talked in the preseason, one of the formulas to this team touching 7, 8, 9 wins was a top half special teams. Well, this is one of the best special teams in the NFL, and you take out some games that they lost because of turnovers on special teams, and this is easily the best special teams in the NFL. Isaiah Williams, after a terrible start to his Jets tenure, is dynamic, almost breaks another one. When Kene Nwangwu is healthy, he is able to do great things, and they have a punter who is one of the finest young punters in the league. He's a top 5 punter this year, and God bless Nick Folk, 12 years in between walk-off, game-winning field goals against the Atlanta Falcons. It's remarkable what he's been able to do, too, here, as he is the oldest player on the team. He was a teammate of Aaron Glenn when they were on the Cowboys, and now he's kicking for him. And that's a positive story, too. And Chris Banjo, who, again, there was some sloppy play from the special teams early in the season. Banjo is a well-liked guy in the NFL. He certainly has a bright career ahead of him in terms of being a coach in the NFL. I would not be surprised if someone else scoops him up soon to be a defensive coordinator. But overall, that part of the gameplay has been phenomenal. And it makes you wish that this team was just more functioning and would have stepped away from Justin Fields earlier. That's going to be, when we write the obituary for the 2025 New York Jets, it's going to be that they defied what their eyes saw with Justin Fields and kept throwing him out there. And maybe it's because Tyrod Taylor wasn't fully healthy. We won't ever know what the truth is with that, but it's a shame because this team deserved better. This team was not supposed to be as bad as they were early. And we're still longing for a day where they're playing football in December and the game means something in terms of making the playoffs. But the game does mean something in terms of taking out your division rival and knocking him out of the playoffs. And if you look at Pro Football Focus, the Jets are a better team than the Miami Dolphins, and they've shown that. I mean, Miami's truly one of the worst teams in football. They're coming off a stretch of really nice play, but that's because they played the Saints, the Commanders. They beat the Bills in a fluky game, and they beat the Falcons. All teams that are, besides the Bills, are wins you should have. Now, that came off after losing to the Browns, Chargers, and Panthers. And besides the Browns, those losses don't look as bad right now as they did earlier in the year. But this offense is not the dynamic offense of years previous of the Dolphins. And this defense isn't good. Defense is not good at all. The Jets should be able to score on Sunday at MetLife against the Miami Dolphins. And it'd be great to see more excitement from A.D. Mitchell. It'd be great to see John Mechie have a few other bright plays. As they try to solidify their spot on this roster next year, they should not be wide receiver 2. And Muji, who I think overall will have a positive grade in his rookie year, despite winning somewhere between 3 and 5 games. One of the original sins of the season was not having a wide receiver 2. So you still either have to draft one with your high draft pick, or you need to bring in someone else. But a season where Garrett Wilson is your 1, someone much more formidable is your number 2, and then Mechie and A.D. Mitchell are your 3, 4 in whatever combination, and you bring in a nice young player in Mason Taylor, that is a nice looking offense for a quarterback to step into. A functioning offensive line that has been good at times and at times struggled, but I think has a promising future. And if they re-sign Breece Hall or give him a transition tag or give him the franchise tag, then that is an offense that isn't that bad. Now, the quarterback is the difference, and we're not going to see a top 5 pick most likely for the Jets, so quarterback in this draft may not happen. But do you go out and is it Jameis Winston? Is it, I hope it's not Kyler Murray, and Murray's out for the rest of this year, but there'll be a veteran who shakes loose. And then if you want to fantasize about a world where they give the Bengals all of their draft picks and they take on Joe Burrow, then feel free to dream. I don't think that's going to happen. But there's now paths once again, just like the year leading up to Aaron Rodgers coming in, of, hey, this roster isn't terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible. And a good quarterback can win some games. If you think about the previous seasons where the Jets have completely bottomed out at the end of the year, right? No-show performances all the time. And that happened a lot under Saleh. It definitely happened under Gase. Think about the quarterbacks who played in those games, right? Zach Wilson, Josh Johnson in those games. We didn't have a quarterback as good as Tyrod Taylor. You got obviously the famous Chris Streveler Thursday night game. There's just, Falk. Some guys who had no business being in the NFL have started games at the end of the season for the Jets over the last 5 years. And Tim Boyle, right? I mean, these are non-functioning non-NFL players who were starting games, and that's why they looked as bad as they did. All this to be said that you now bring in a quarterback who can play a little bit, and this team can once again try to build a foundation where they have a bridge to a franchise quarterback who's a youngster. If it's not this draft, maybe next draft. And on we go. So the game against Miami will be hopefully fun. It would be great to see them compete against a team that has a glimmer of hope, and it makes it feel better that it's the Dolphins. Today is the 25th anniversary of the Jumbo Elliott Monday Night Miracle game, and the Dolphins, in a lot of ways, one of my big frustrations in how the Jets are perceived is the Dolphins haven't won a playoff game in 25 years. It's been 25 years since the Dolphins won a playoff game. And the Jets are looked at as the joke of this division, and that's rightfully so. And if you look at the other side of the city with the New York Giants and the disaster that is Abdul Carter and Jackson Dart getting pounded once again, and just the team looking like a mess, another kicking fiasco, that the inmates running the asylum with the New York Giants, and that's supposed to be the tried and true professional franchise. No one has more losses in the NFL over the last 10 years than the New York Giants, and that includes the Jets, who are right behind them. But it'd be great to knock the Dolphins out. A win for Miami, though, then things get a little bit interesting. They have 6 wins, and the rest of their schedule is at Pittsburgh, and Talk about not having regret. Aaron Rodgers has been terrible, and now him and his teammates are fighting, and there's a really good chance the Pittsburgh Steelers don't make the playoffs. They're at Pittsburgh next week. They play the Bengals. The Bengals certainly have more fight now they have Joe Burrow, and I was all over that win against Baltimore and made some money off of that because that Bengals team with Joe Burrow is obviously a completely different team. But if you're a team fighting for a playoff spot, you should be able to beat them. And then they have Tampa, New England. So Miami has a rough schedule after this game. But from their perspective, they've taken care of business against bad teams. They had a surprising win against the Bills. Now they should beat the Jets and at least give themselves some hope to say, hey, if we can find our way to 8 wins, maybe we make the playoffs. But I think the Jets have a good shot on Sunday. The rest of their schedule after this is tough. At Jacksonville, who could very likely end up winning the AFC South as the Colts and Daniel Jones sink like a rock right now. Then they have to go to New Orleans, which should be a win. And that's another one of those moments where I don't care about draft picks. You shouldn't lose to the Saints. And they finish against New England at home. New England, not just the likely divisional champs, but easily could have the number 1 record in the conference. And we're talking about them having another MVP quarterback, and that's hard to see. So I'd like to see them put up a fight against New England, and they finish with things at Buffalo. That will not be a night game. That game has 1 o'clock written all over it, although it's not scheduled yet. But it's a tougher schedule from here. This could be their last win since New Orleans is on the road. But either way, beat the Dolphins, keep playing with the pride they've been showing, and give Jets fans something to be excited about. And that's our job as Jets fans, is to try to pretend like there's hope in the next year. And I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that this team has turned a corner. There are a lot of question marks on this team, but Aaron Glenn with a strong close here could make him be one of those things that you're not questioning. And that'd be promising in terms of being able to bring in talent as we look towards the 2026 season. So the Jets and Dolphins play on Sunday at MetLife Stadium, an opportunity for them to knock out the Dolphins from the playoff hunt, and that'd be a nice thing to see. So this has been episode 35 of the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I'm Allan Simon. Thank you for listening.